The chamber of the House of Commons opened with the familiar ritual of applause, but the tone of the day was anything but routine. What unfolded was a debate that cut to the very core of Britain's foreign policy, NATO security, and the moral standing of one of the country's most important diplomatic figures. An opposition member of Parliament rose, her words sharpened by the urgency of the international moment. She began not with domestic politics, but with a reminder of the larger storm gathering across Europe. Mr. Speaker, a NATO country, has just had to defend itself against Russian drones. Now, more than ever, we need our ambassador to Washington fully focused on this issue and liaising closely with America. It was a blunt opening, linking the most immediate security threat facing the alliance with the credibility of the United Kingdom's representative in Washington. And then came the pointed question, heavy with implication. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in Peter Mandlesson? The House hushed. This was not simply about NATO, nor even Russia's escalation. It was about a man whose name had become entangled with one of the darkest scandals of recent decades, Jeffrey Epstein. The Prime Minister responded with solemnity, clearly aware that his words would echo far beyond Westminster. He began by anchoring his remarks in the suffering of Epstein's victims, perhaps hoping to establish moral ground before defending his ambassador. Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying the victims of Epstein are the forefront of our minds. He was a despicable criminal who committed the most heinous crimes and destroyed the lives of so many women and girls. The chamber listened in silence, the gravity of those crimes needing no elaboration. Then, as expected, the Prime Minister turned to the figure at the heart of the question. Lord Mandlesson, Britain's ambassador to Washington. The ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret for his association with him. He's right to do so. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship. Government benches broke into applause, eager to signal unity, yet the murmurs from the opposition side revealed that this answer would not end the matter. The opposition MP returned to her feet, her voice cutting through the noise of the chamber. She did not waste words. This is interesting, Mr. Speaker. He says the ambassador has expressed full regret, but the victims of the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein have called for Lord Mandlesson to be sacked. The air grew heavy. Members shifted in their seats as she pressed further, determined to lay bare the historical record. And just so the House is aware, in 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of child prostitution and sex trafficking that took place between 2002 and 2005. That is the precise period which Lord Mandlesson called Jeffrey Epstein his best pal. Gasps and muttering filled the Commons. The accusation struck with force, for it highlighted not merely an association but a timeline, years during which Epstein's predatory crimes were carried out and when, reportedly, Mandlesson considered him a close friend. The MP leaned forward, her voice rising. Was the Prime Minister aware of this intimate relationship when he appointed Lord Mandlesson to be our ambassador in Washington? It was a question designed to pierce the Prime Minister's armour of procedure and process and to suggest that judgment itself was now on trial. The Prime Minister, measured and deliberate, chose again the language of procedure. He avoided the temptation to strike back politically, instead grounding his defence in the mechanisms of appointment and the notion of redemption. Mr. Speaker, as she and the House would expect, full due process was followed during this appointment. As it is with all ambassadors, the ambassador has repeatedly expressed his deep regret. He is right to do so. He's now playing an important part in the US-UK relationship. Applause followed once more, but it was applause tempered by unease. For outside the chamber, the scandal carried an even sharper edge. This debate did not occur in a vacuum. The mention of Russian drones at the outset was no rhetorical flourish. Across NATO's eastern frontier, the threat of escalation with Moscow has grown more real with every passing month. A drone strike on alliance soil is not merely a tactical event. It is a challenge to the very principle of collective defence. In Washington, London's voice is critical in shaping the alliance's response. At such a moment, the credibility of Britain's ambassador matters enormously. He is the face of the United Kingdom in the United States, the intermediary who must secure cooperation, share intelligence, and hold firm in the halls of American power. Any shadow of scandal risks undermining not only his own standing, but Britain's influence abroad. And so the Commons confrontation had a dual edge. one part about NATO's survival, the other about the moral integrity of Britain's diplomatic appointments. For the Prime Minister, the line was clear. Mandlesson's past association with Epstein was regrettable, but his regret was genuine. Due process was followed, and the present outweighed the past. The ambassador, he insisted, was already playing a vital role in strengthening the UK-US bond. For the opposition, the question was equally clear but far sharper. Regret alone could not erase the perception of intimacy with a convicted pedophile, particularly when the victims themselves had called for his removal. Britain's moral credibility, they argued, was at stake. This was more than politics. It was about trust. Could victims of abuse trust that their voices mattered when a man once close to Epstein held such a position of power? Could the public trust the government's vetting process? Could allies trust Britain's envoy to speak with authority, untainted by scandal? The Commons mirrored the divide. Applause on the government benches signalled loyalty. Gasps and outrage from the opposition benches signalled disbelief. And somewhere in the middle, the silence of unease suggested that even some onlookers felt the weight of the questions left unanswered. Beyond Westminster, the debate has already begun reshaping perceptions. Diplomats whisper about distraction, the fear that controversy might sap the ambassador's ability to focus on the urgent business of alliance coordination. Advocacy groups remind the government that survivors' calls for accountability cannot simply be brushed aside. And for ordinary citizens, the optics are stark. Britain's representative in Washington, tied to one of the most notorious criminals of recent history, defended not once but twice by a prime minister who insists on confidence while victims demand dismissal. The issue now stretches well beyond Lord Mandlesson himself. It has become a test of the government's judgment, its priorities, and its sensitivity to moral outrage. The Prime Minister's words were unambiguous. I have confidence in him, and he's playing an important role in the UK-US relationship. The opposition's challenge was equally cutting. The victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein have called for Lord Mandlesson to be sacked. Between those two positions lies a gap that speaks volumes. On one side, the calculation of statecraft, insisting that what matters most is the ambassador's present function at a time of war. On the other, the insistence that credibility cannot coexist with scandal and that moral authority is inseparable from political authority. In truth, both arguments strike chords of reality. NATO does need focus, coordination, and transatlantic unity at a moment when Russian aggression is testing the alliance's will. But Britain also needs representatives whose integrity is unimpeachable, particularly when the crimes of Epstein remain so raw and the voices of his victims so insistent. The Commons debate, therefore, was more than a clash of party politics. It was a mirror held up to Britain itself, forcing the nation to reckon with its balance of pragmatism and principle, its tolerance for regret versus its demand for accountability. As the chamber quieted, the applause faded, and the debate drew to a close. The question lingered. Can Britain reconcile the urgent needs of diplomacy with the enduring demands of morality? For now, Lord Mandlesson remains in Washington. The Prime Minister remains steadfast in his defence. The opposition remains relentless in its criticism, and the victims remain unheard within the walls of power, their calls for dismissal echoing beyond the Commons. In the weeks to come, this clash will not be forgotten. It will be remembered as a moment when Parliament asked not only about an ambassador, but about Britain's values in the face of scandal.